All right, glad you are with us as we get you set for Week 17. We will not talk about the Jets, New England. Not going to talk about Vegas, Denver. We're not going to talk about the Chargers in Kansas City, Minnesota, Detroit. Those are the only 4 games that don't matter. The good news is we've got a dozen games on the last Sunday of the season that matter. So we'll be busy. Football night's going to be a 3-ring circus getting the show on the air, but we'll have a lot of fun. Of course, Rodney, Tony, and Mike Florio and Mike Tirico with you here now. Mike Florio, I'm going to start with you, and I want to start with Pittsburgh and that news that they're going to rest Ben Roethlisberger here in Week 17 against Cleveland when they could become a 2 seed. The sign is we'd rather be healthy as opposed to be the 2 seed, and may cost them a home playoff game in the second round. Your thoughts on the reaction from Pittsburgh and that announcement from Mike Tomlin?
Well, this is a calculated decision that Mike Tomlin had to make over what you prioritize. And when you consider everything his team has been through this year, from the standpoint of the bye week that was postponed, or not postponed, but actually canceled because they got ready for the Titans Week 4. Then they didn't play the Titans Week 4. Then their bye week, Week 7, became the Titans game. And then with the Thanksgiving game, they got moved 6 days. They haven't really had a break. And when you throw on top of it the conflicting information about whether and to what extent Ben Roethlisberger has a knee injury, at a minimum, it makes sense to give him a break, understanding that, yeah, if we get to the divisional round, we may have to go to Buffalo, but if we don't give some of these guys a break, we may not get to the divisional round. And I think that's the analysis Mike Tomlin engaged in. And look, there's still a chance, I guess, that they could beat the Browns without Ben Roethlisberger. Not a great chance, but I respect what Tomlin's doing because he's got some guys who desperately need a bit of a break going into the postseason.
Yeah, and you hit it, Mike, calculation. And I know that's what Mike Tomlin is sitting there doing. Hey, we can go all out. It would be great to be the number 2 seed, but is Miami really going to be able to go in the cold and beat Buffalo? If they don't do that, then it doesn't matter to us. So why take that risk? Why not get ourselves ready? If by some chance Miami beats Buffalo, we missed out on it. We've just got to win on the road instead of at home 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, guys, I think this is a smart move by Mike Tomlin. Anytime you get an opportunity to rest your players and allow them to just get that recovery, it's huge, especially an old quarterback. I mean, you look on a defensive side, they've had some injuries, and it's nothing like, you can ask Coach Dungy, it's nothing like being able to get that extra week's rest off, and it just rejuvenates, it just refreshes everyone, Mike.
I just hear you two guys have experienced it so often. Rodney, I'll come right back to you on the Buffalo part of this equation. They look so good Monday in New England. I mean, Bills fans, that game could have lasted 8 hours because it was 20 years of watching the Patriots beat up on them. They seem to be enjoying that moment. Do you see, Rodney, a team over the last couple of weeks on national TV that's getting comfortable with everybody knowing they're a pretty good team, and maybe they're more ready for the playoff stage now than they were the last couple of years?
Yeah, very comfortable, Mike, and actually embracing just all the success, but doing it in a very humble way. You saw just the way Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen and just how everyone talks about each other. No one really says, hey, it's all me. They're always deflecting the attention off to their teammates. So I like what Buffalo's doing. I thought the defense has been a lot more aggressive. Leslie Frazier's done a really wonderful job, and no one's really talking about Leslie Frazier, the job that he's done the last month of the season, Coach.
You're right, and they've had to really recover on defense and replace some people, and they've done it. And their defense is playing much better than they were at the beginning of the year. And to me, that's going to be the key. They're going to score points. And can they stop people in the critical times? And they're showing more signs of that. So they're very dangerous, in my opinion.
And I think for that reason, they need to keep the pedal to the metal. You know, there's an unknown at this point what the Bills are going to do this weekend. And I kind of think that both the Bills and the Steelers aren't thrilled about the prospect of being the 2 seed if it means facing Baltimore right out of the gates. But I like the idea of the Bills continuing to push and push and push. Since the bye week, since the Hail Murray game, they have become a different team. They've now won 5 in a row, all by double digits. They've been dominant the last 2 games. And I think that convincing themselves that they're dominant, convincing their opponents that they're dominant, I think that's the key to having success in January, especially if they cross paths with the Chiefs.
I just say this one thing.
Good. Good, Rod.
No, I just say this is a team that really doesn't lack confidence. If you have an opportunity to get that week off, I mean, they've been grinding. I mean, not just physically or just mentally, but dealing with the whole COVID thing. So anytime you get an opportunity to let those guys rest, especially seeing Jordan Poyer basically get carried off the field on Monday. Matt Milano had some issues. You know, he's come back. He's healthy. If you can give those defensive players that have played so hard and so tough and some of those offensive linemen, if you can give them an opportunity to rest before you go into the playoffs, and that rest, that 1 week feels like an eternity when you've gone through everything that these guys have gone through, from all the testing, from all the different challenges, them not being able to spend time with their families, and so many of them sacrificing so much. I think you just have to give them a break, Mike, and just say, you know what, whoever is the number 2 seed, whoever we play, we just have to line up and play.
It's a good point, and Mike, you bring that up as well. Does Buffalo keep the pedal down, or do they rest guys? Cole Beasley hurt, he's week to week. Tony, there are a whole bunch of scenarios. This whole color-coded chart, these are all the scenarios for who could be the 7 seed, right? So you're not going to know until the game's going on what's going to happen. Tony, would you have, and we have the games played simultaneously, which is a lot of fun. Would you have somebody in the box letting you know as the head coach, hey, coach, Pittsburgh is down big and they're just running the ball, so it looks like they're laying down. If you were Sean McDermott, would you want that information in game?
You do want that information, but you don't want your players to get it, and you don't want them to have it, because that's what you would do. Hey, it doesn't matter now at this point. Pittsburgh is not going to win this game. We can take our guys out now. We don't have to take that risk at the end. You can make that decision on your own, but you don't want your players to know. I remember we were in Tampa and we were scoreboard watching, and I had the people not show the scores on the screen, and everything. My boys were on the sideline telling the players, "So they're losing. LA's losing. We're in good shape." I'm like, "Come on, man!" So it's going to happen.
That's a great story.
You know, in this day and age, it happens. You got to just remind them, "Hey, focus on what we do."
And you know what, Coach Belichick used to always tell us, and he would be dead serious. He says, guys, when I walk on that sideline, I want everybody ready to play. I don't want to see any helmets, any baseball hats, any shoulder pads off. You better be ready to play or you're going to get a big fine. So, yeah, you're absolutely right about that, Coach. Be ready to play.
Yeah.
Rodney, did you ever scoreboard watch during a game?
I did, Mike. I really just paid attention to what I have to do and try to take care of business the way we need to take care of business. Everything else will work itself out.
I figured that was going to be the answer. Mike Florio, I just thought of this with the whole scoreboard watching deal. It's different now. It's not like you have to put the scores up for the fans, right? In many of these places, not all, but many of the games that are going to be played Sunday, there are no fans. So you really, as the home coach, have great control over the information getting or not getting to your teams in a situation like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with Coach Dungy's approach. You want to know so you can make big picture decisions. You can decide who to take out, who to put in. And ideally, you don't want your players to know. But how do they not know? At a minimum, at halftime, you know guys are going to be turning their phones on in their lockers and checking the scores of the other games. And there's going to be somebody down there, whether it's kids of the coach or whoever, who knows what's going on, and they're going to be telling the guys as the game unfolds what really happened. So at that point, you may as well just put the scores up even if fans aren't there.
That's my favorite story. I love that. Tony, what about the Tua conversation with Fitzpatrick in Buffalo, in Miami for the game in Buffalo on Sunday? Do you like the decision that was made right out of the gate by Brian Flores, announcing it Saturday night, not letting it fester, and this is the way we're going to go?
I absolutely do, and I think it's the right decision. Tua Tagovailoa has some growing to do, and there's situations where he's not going to be at his best. Ryan Fitzpatrick, to their benefit, functions well in those situations. So I would start Tua every week. You know, people have to plan for him and the things that he does. Now, if I fall behind or if it's sputtering or I need that one drive, Ryan has shown he can go in there and create it right away. So I think they've got the best of all worlds. And more than anything, the team is on board, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is on board with that.
Yeah, and I just believe they absolutely trust Brian Flores and whatever he says. And if you're Tua and you get an opportunity as a coach to give him that experience and see how well he does in that playoff atmosphere. That's huge. That's experience. Those are reps that he gets. And moving forward, like Coach said, if he struggles, then you could put Fitzpatrick in there and then see what happens. But I just love the fact that this young player, this young quarterback gets to get some of those playoff-type caliber reps.
And in this climate with so many coaches in the mix for Coach of the Year, how do you not give Brian Flores extra credit for coming up with a way to make this work? Tua doesn't complain about getting benched. Fitzpatrick doesn't complain about not being the starter when he's the one who's saving the bacon. No one in the locker room is talking on or off the record about any disagreement with anything that's happening. Brian Flores has full and complete control of this team, controls the message, makes the decisions. I don't think this is sustainable into next year, but they found the right balance, and it's working, and that's a testament to Flores.
Yeah, I did my tentative ballot, Mike. I just like to do it the week before and then take a look at it during the week and then make your final decisions after Sunday. And I was sitting there going, boy, the Ron Rivera story, if Washington wins, is so great. But how do you deny what Flores has done? When you think about where this team was, how bad they were a year and a half ago, tank for Tua, all this stuff. And look at how it's worked out and the ability to manage the team through all this. Minka Fitzpatrick, an all-pro safety, traded out the door, playing well against for Pittsburgh. You may see him in the playoffs, yet they're still performing at every level in this Miami team. Who's the
Tirico,
team,
can I ask you a quick? Can I just ask you a quick question, Tirico? And Brian Flores probably is number 2 guy, but I just don't think. And how could he become ahead of Kevin Stefanski? Kevin Stefanski. I mean, you look at what the Browns were last year. I mean, they were a total disaster. We never thought they would even have an opportunity this year to make the playoffs. And the job that he's done, and he's been quiet, he's been humble, but he's just been a football coach. And as much as Brian Flores, and I was with him in New England, I admire what he's accomplished. But Kevin Stefanski, hands down, for everything that he had to deal with this year and turn around and to change a culture so quickly in the NFL locker room, to me, he's just done an outstanding job, and I think he should be Coach of the Year. Just my humble opinion.
It's a great point. I was making a legitimate argument for about 5 different guys. Tony, go ahead.
I love what Kevin has done, changing the culture there. I think he's been great. But I go back to your point, Mike. At this time last year, a year ago, so you take in a year and a half, Laramie Tunsil, he's gone now, our best offensive player. Minka Fitzpatrick, our best defensive player. And people are saying, gosh, does anybody want to be there? And what is our front office doing? And Brian just kept saying, we have a plan. We know what we're doing, and people have bought into it. And I think Ryan Fitzpatrick's interview after the game, when they were trying to bait him into saying, I want to start and I should be the starter, and he said, you know what? Coach Flores is going to make that decision, and whatever he decides is going to be the right decision, and we are all on board with it. I thought that was it just warmed my heart to hear him say that.
What about Cole?
I'm glad you said that.
Coach of the Year?
Yeah, I know. You split your vote. It's tough to kind of split your vote, and it's odd because you only vote for first place. It's a conversation maybe we'll get into next week, but like the MVP vote, when you have an MVP vote, you only get first place. It's the only major sports MVP where you can't go first, second, third. I wish you could go first, second, third, because now you're asking people to pick between Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. Really? How do you? You can say one's first, but you want to have somewhere on your ballot. So when all that conversation came up in October, Russell Wilson's never received even one vote for MVP. There's a reason, because in all the years that he had a chance to be the MVP, for most, there was a clear-cut number 1 choice. So that was a silly conversation. All right, can I ask you guys real quick, who's going to be out in the AFC? Who's not going to make it? Which team will be left on the outside? Oh, hang on, Rodney. I know it's a tough question. It's not that hard.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Then I'll start. You're a little flustered, so I'm going to come to you. Who's the team that's going to be out in the AFC, Rodney?
I hate to say it, but I think it's the Indianapolis Colts. I just think that Pittsburgh and not Baltimore, but who's the other team? The Buffalo Bills will rest their players. And I just think, the Indianapolis Colts had an opportunity. They stopped running the ball. The defense couldn't stop anybody in the second half. And I think, unfortunately, and they've had an outstanding year, I think they're going to be on outs.
Tony?
Well, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to say the Miami Dolphins. I think that number 2 seed is very important to Buffalo. I think they want to play at home against Pittsburgh if it comes down to that. And as Rodney, you remind me over and over again, I've taken warm weather teams up there in December, and we have shivered and not played our best. And I can see Miami going up there with all good intentions and going to Buffalo in 10 degrees and not playing their best. Indianapolis is going to beat Jacksonville. So I think it's going to be Miami.
All right, Mike.
And I agree with Coach. I think it's going to be Miami because I think the Bills are going to win that game. But if the Bills pull their starters and Miami wins, all these teams at 10-6 could win, and it would be the Colts at 11-5 that don't make it. Who would have dreamed that a team doesn't make it at 11-5 with 7 spots available? But and then in the NFC, you could have a team at 8-8 that gets in. So that's going to happen potentially every year, but it would be bad for the Colts. Well,
not 8-8,
as a wild card. As a wild card. I mean, as a wild card.
Okay.
6-10. Yeah. You could have a team get in at 6-10 if the Giants end up pulling it off.
That's what I'm thinking. Can you imagine if you're Indianapolis and you're 11-5 and everybody wins and you're out of the playoffs, and then you turn on the TV next weekend and a team that won 5 fewer games than you, 6-10, is in the postseason? That's going to be hard to stomach. And by the way, we've said it once, we'll say it 1,000 times. We cannot let these 6-10 teams host playoff games. If there's more than a 2-game difference, the other team has to host. Tampa, in all likelihood, will be going to a 6-10 or a 7-9 win team. I know you won the division.
Mike Tirico for commissioner.
A home playoff game. No, I'm good. Thank you. I'll take the salary, but I'm good with everything else. Hey, let me ask you guys about the Rams-Arizona game for a second, because you look at this, and all of a sudden you're going to see John Wolford playing quarterback Tony, week 17, and you have to go with a quarterback who has never thrown a pass in the NFL. How does Sean McVay tackle this one?
You go, Chuck Noll, he was in that situation. Mike Florio will remember it well in 1974. And he said, we're going to run the ball and play defense. And that's what you have to do. And if the game comes down to that, if Kyler Murray's limited or can't go, then Arizona will be in the same boat. And I would put a little more stock in L.A. at that point if it comes down to 2 teams running the ball and playing defense. But I think that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, if you're the Rams defensively, you have to just try to figure out a way to come up with a couple turnovers, try to score on defense. Aaron Donald, those guys, Jalen Ramsey, they're going to have to just step up and play. Your offense is down. You don't have your starting quarterback. You're missing 2 of your running backs. You're going to have to score on the defensive side of the ball.
And look, John Wolford is on that team for a reason. They could have brought back Blake Bortles. They could have signed some other quarterback if they wanted to. They went with John Wolford. He's been there all year. He knows the offense. Sean McVay believes in him. And if we believe that McVay is the genius that he has proven to be, we got to defer to his choice at quarterback, at backup quarterback. And I think that Wolford, as that guy that McVay has taught and instructed and is guiding through, the speaker in his helmet, every play, what to do and how to do it, I think the Rams will be fine. And here's the problem for the Rams. If they're fine with John Wolford, you're going to have more and more people saying, why did you give all that money to Jared Goff?
Yes, you will. Yes, you will.
That could be the Arizona hot shots. If they go out and win, and he does it well.
That's right. What do you do for the playoff game the next week? The Arizona Hotshots have never gotten more attention and love than they have this past week. It's funny, guys. I was looking back at a Wake Forest Notre Dame game that we did 3 years ago, and the 2 quarterbacks at Wake Forest were Wolford, the starter, and Kendall Hinton, the backup. And Hinton's the one who played for the Broncos when their quarterback. Who would have known that the Wake Forest 1 and 2 quarterbacks would become a significant part? That's how crazy this NFL season has been. Chicago, Rodney. We laughed on the set. Who would have thought? You say Chicago's got one of the hot offenses in all the NFL right now. They're playing Green Bay. They're playing a much better team than they have the last 4 weeks this week. Can they ride that momentum at Soldier Field and get themselves into the playoffs?
No. The Green Bay wants that number 1 seed. They want the number 1 seed. I mean, if you're Aaron Rodgers, you're 40-something years old, man, you want that number 1 seed. You don't work this hard to get to the point in week 17 you're playing against the Chicago Bears and you lose to the Chicago Bears. That's just not going to happen. I don't see that happening. That bye is so important. Like I said before, like I said earlier in the show, it feels like an eternity because now your body's recovered, your mind, and you're ready to play. So I don't see Aaron Rodgers losing to the Chicago Bears. I don't care what type of momentum they have.
Aaron will drive these guys, but, Rodney, they still are going to have to overcome human nature. We just killed this team by 15 points. They're not as good as we are. And Green Bay is going to have to overcome that. Chicago is better than when we saw them on Sunday night. Green Bay is very good. Green Bay should win it. But there's that just emotional effect that, hey, we can handle these guys. We're going to be fine.
And even though the Packers are 25 and – go ahead, Rodney.
No, I'm just saying that
even though the Packers
– go ahead, Mike.
Even though the Packers are 25-6 under Matt LaFleur, and he's a guy that could be on that ballot as well for Coach of the Year, we just take for granted that he's going to make this team 13-3. They have the potential out of the blue to have one of these games where everyone's scratching their head saying, what happened to the Packers today? Where was their energy? What went on? And you'll hear Aaron Rodgers talk about it after the game. I don't know what happened. And I'm always watching for that next I don't know what happened game from the Green Bay Packers. So I can never rule it out. And Coach, like you said, they beat the Bears easily the last time around. This could be one of those pothole games for the Packers. And the next thing you know, they don't have the top seed. I'd like to think that what they did in the snow to the Titans will be all the incentive they need to go to Soldier Field, take care of business so the road to the Super Bowl goes through Lambeau Field.
Are you guys nuts? Are you guys nuts? So all of a sudden, because they beat the Chicago Bears earlier this year and they beat them, convincingly, now all of a sudden they're going to get to week 17 with the number 1 seed on the line, and all of a sudden they're going to say, you know what, we're complacent. We're not going to go. These guys are hungry. Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, these guys are hungry. Now you add in A.J. Dillon in the mix. And he's going to be a great compliment to Aaron Jones. I think you guys are just flat out wrong. This is a very mature team. And Aaron Rodgers knows that his window of opportunity is closing. That's why he keeps talking about these MVPs and how important they are. I believe that this is a very mature team. They got great leadership, and I just believe that they're going to come out and they're going to give it to the Chicago Bears.
There are still the scenarios where Chicago gets in the playoffs if they lose this game, which is probably the most likely scenario. If that's the case, what a fascinating week or two of conversation that will be around the Bears, because they got in the playoffs, they rallied from a very poor record to get in. And the question, Mike Florio, is going to be, what do you do now with all the decisions that have to be made regarding GM, head coach, and quarterback if this is, in fact, a playoff team, which they very well could be, even if they lose to Green Bay.
And I think they've done enough to keep Ryan Pace at GM and Matt Nagy at head coach for another season. I still wonder why Ted Phillips' name as the president of the team doesn't come up more often. He's been there 20 years. He's the one common link through the underachievement the team has had for the most part. But Trubisky's going to be the key because they didn't exercise the fifth-year option. He's headed for free agency. And if they play in January and other teams get a chance to see him and he plays well, that's when that market could start to bubble up for his services, and the Bears could end up having to pay more than they want to pay to keep him around, or rip up the roster at least at the quarterback position and start over again next year.
All right, so who's out? Arizona, the Rams, or Chicago?
I think Arizona's going to be out. I think they're going to struggle with Kyler Murray being limited playing against that defense. I think they're going to struggle.
I agree with you, Coach. I agree with Coach.
Mike?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Arizona. It may be Chris Streveler, CFL legend, dual threat quarterback, which means he's not a very good passer. Chris Streveler at quarterback potentially. But Arizona gave us a glimpse of what they could be, but they've kind of regressed to this 500-level team. And I fear that that's all they're going to be without some sort of a major upgrade, maybe defensively, maybe change things up offensively, use Kyler Murray a little bit differently. But they disappointed me the most. For as good as the Bills have been since the Hail Murray game, the Cardinals are the ones that went the other way.
Don't doubt the NFC, the conference of championship quarterbacks. Rodgers, Breeze, Brady, Wilson, and Streveler. Won the Grey Cup, right? Championship quarterbacks reside in the NFC, so don't count them out. Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.